He was the star of The Apprentice. He had built some buildings. He was a billionaire, had a beautiful wife. What were you going to say? 8 years later, there's a lot to say and a lot to differentiate. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And nobody else in this race is willing to do it. They're afraid to do it, or they're unable to do it. And we're going to do it.
Why is that?
Well, I think over time, Donald Trump has cowed a lot of people, Becky. And, people get upset about being called names in public. I'm from New Jersey. I get called names in public all the time. It doesn't matter. I'm used to it. And I've known him for 22 years. I think the difference is most of the people in politics have only known him for 8 or 9 or 10 years. I've known him for 22 years. I'm not afraid of him. He's a paper tiger.
What did it take? What was it with him that you thought, forget it, I'm not going to work with you anymore, support you anymore? You did help him.
Election night 2020. I was sitting on the set at ABC, and when he got out there and said at 2:30 in the morning, the election's been stolen, when I know that the votes weren't even all counted yet, he couldn't have had any idea that the election was stolen. I said, you can't stand as president of the United States in the East Room of the White House and say that to the American people. It undercuts their confidence in the democracy. We've seen what's happened in the 2.5 years since then on that. And I sat there, I turned to George Stephanopoulos, I said, come to me right after the speech because I've got something to say. And that was really the breaking point for the two of us. And at that time, that was a relationship that had gone on for almost 20 years. But, you can't do that stuff to our democracy when you've been privileged to be president of the United States. And now you see some of the crazy stuff he said last night on TV that I didn't respond to a grand jury subpoena because, I'm very busy. Well, how many rounds of golf has he played in the 2.5 years since he left office? He's too busy to go through the boxes to do what? To move classified information from his golf shirts and his golf pants? That's seemingly what he was saying last night. Like, the voters in the United States are going to listen to this, Joe, and they're going to say, no, not this time. We've seen this show. We don't want to rerun.
Christie here is being very aggressive, obviously, for his own purposes, but this is a big aggression now.
Like, he called it, you see, when he says DeSantis, it just comes out to sanctimonious. I mean, he said it last night. It was like, I said, what did he say? Oh, he's talking about DeSantis.
Well, of course. And look, he's into the name calling and all the rest of that, and that's fine. It was new. It was different 8 years ago. It is old now, Joe, and it's going to get even older.
Look at those numbers, Chris.
I see them. You know what? Look, I see them, and I will tell you what. This election is not decided today. And those numbers are national numbers, and no one's run a campaign against him yet. But people will start to do it.
Remember when he said I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue?
Yeah.
Well, that's still true and I would never, ever channel Hillary Clinton, but what are those 30% that just no matter what, just are they deplorables? How does that work?
No, what has happened is he has tapped into the anxiety and anger. A lot based off the economy, guys, where people feel like
we should talk about that.
They're displaced.
You got to have your own ideas to do this if you want to do it. What do we? Inflation's bad. What caused the inflation, and what do we do about it?
Excessive government spending. You know what caused the inflation? It was out of control, ridiculous
around
government
the world,
spending.
Though, Chris, it's everywhere. It's not just here.
But listen, if something like that happens in the United States, it spreads everywhere. We're the most dominant economy.
It's quickly just worth noting that Donald Trump did mention that in 2016, I could shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any votes. Obviously, I think it was a rhetorical argument. It's worth putting into a little more context. It was a political campaign rally in 2016.
It would be Trump's platform, right?
Look, except I'd be able to do it. This is a guy who said he was going to build the wall on the southern border. Mexico was going to pay for it. And we have a quarter of a wall and not the first peso in the door.
So what do you do with immigration? And what do you do with the border?
You need to do two things. Three things, I'd say. First, at the border, right away, I'd send National Guard to the border to interdict fentanyl. 110,000 overdose deaths in this country last year. It's now the leading killer in men 18 to 34 in this country. That's job one. Job two is to finish building the wall. We started it. Let's just finish it and get that done. And third is to bring both parties together, like I did in New Jersey, on things like pension reform and health benefit reform and police reform, where people said none of these things can be done. We do that on immigration and say to everybody, everyone's going to have to give something on this that they don't like. But in the end, we need to do things like all these graduate students who come from all over the world to come to school here, they should stay here and work here. We need to have a merit-based system on immigration where the people who can contribute to our economy and our society get to stay here. But to get that, we're going to have to make compromises with the other side and be able to get that done I did that in a blue state for 8 years. It's a skill. You got to know how to do it and not be afraid of doing it. So those are the 3 things I think we need to do on immigration. You do those 3 things, we'll have immigration under control and our economy will grow.
What would you do with the Dreamers?
I did this in New Jersey. Look, with Dreamers in New Jersey, we gave them in-state tuition rates. I'm paying as a New Jersey taxpayer to educate them K through 12. Don't we want them to be able to afford to go to college then? We've already made that investment once they've come here. And so but in a larger part of the Dreamers, it's all going to be part of an overall deal. Everyone's got to be able to get something out of this for it to be done, because otherwise we're going to be sitting here with the same problem 20 years from now. And that's not going to be good for the safety of our country. It's not going to be good for our economy.
The 31 trillion, I don't know who's.
He could have said that a lot more clearly. He implies we're paying for people to go to college. It's more taxpayers are already paying for K through 12. So may as well also let them go to college.
So the only thing that will solve any of this is probably growth. Other people would argue we need more revenue, higher taxes. Like we didn't have enough. Like
Right.
how much did we have last year to spend and still didn't have enough?
Look, it's not higher. It's not higher taxes, Joe.
Well, that's what you're going to hear.
Of course,
obviously.
that's what you're going to hear. But that's what you always hear from the other side. There's 2 things you have to do. You have to revitalize the economy to bring more growth. And secondly, you have to reduce spending. You just have to.
Where?
You have
It's
to.
debt service.
Well, you obviously can't reduce that, Joe. But we have spent trillions on other things over the last 5 years. Trillions. Donald Trump said when he ran in 2016, I will balance the budget in 4 years. He left with the largest deficit of any president in modern history.
COVID.
Before COVID, he had that, Joe.
Right.
He was running huge deficits, and we need to deal with Social Security because 2034, 24% benefit cut. There are millions of people in this country.
You won't talk
who
about
won't
that if
survive
you're
it.
the nominee.
Of course I will. I'm talking about it right now. The fact is we have to look at things like means testing for the very wealthy. Don't need to get Social Security. And secondly, for people in their 30s and 40s, we need to consider, raising the retirement age. They'll have plenty of time to plan for that.
Ooh, that'll be very unpopular.
But for people in their 30s or 40s, we have time through your
Remember what happened in Paris?
to plan for that,
It was all the young people who protested.
bring the cost down.
Who are your backers at this point financially? Because we might like to think that anybody can get elected without financial backing, but you need it.
No, I can't. And I wouldn't have gotten into the race unless I had some very significant people. I don't want to do it yet, Becky, because we're going to put out a report on June, mid-July for our June 30th report. But I think what you're going to find are a lot of people who were with Donald Trump before are now with us. Some folks who were with other candidates in 2016, like Jeb Bush, like Marco Rubio, are now with us. And I think folks who want someone who's going to take this on directly. We were talking about this before we came on. How do you win this race? It's fantasy to believe you can win this race by not taking on Donald Trump. He's in front. How do you beat someone and not talk about them? I look at the other candidates in this race. They're
trying to keep the 30.
well,
the 30%.
They're never getting the 30. Joe, if you like Coke and new Coke comes out, why are you buying new Coke? You say, I like Coke. It's right over here. I've been drinking it forever. I'm going to keep drinking it.
For a minute, I thought you were talking about Hunter. I didn't know where you were
Easy.
going with that.
We can get into that later. But here's the thing.
Oh.
You have to be able to differentiate yourself. 70% of the Republican primary electorate say either I will never vote for Trump or I'm considering voting for someone else.
Yeah.
How about we focus on the 70 instead of the 30, Joe?
I wish you had lightning in a bottle at that one point when I hope you recapture it, Governor, just to give
We're
it.
going to
give it a go.
recapture it, Joe.
All right, well,
Watch it.
thanks
I'm
for
going to
coming on.
recapture it right here with you and
And you
Becky.
come back on.
And Andrew's not here this morning. What a gift! This is like my summer gift that Andrew's not here.
All right.
Come back.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you, Becky.
All right. I mean, honestly, you have to say he's there's some things he could say more clearly, I think, to Americans when he's speaking. I think he's speaking in such a way that, unless you know some of the specific details of what he's talking about, it's somewhat hard to follow along. See, that's something that Donald Trump does great. He'll play it he'll translate things very, very simply. That's a very big difference between the two here, right? You get this Christie, all right, we're gonna, we haven't seen a dime of pesos come in the door yet. It's like, this translated into, and then kind of quickly skirts past that. We only built a fourth of the wall and haven't seen a dime of pesos yet in the door. If Donald Trump were to make that argument, it'd be more like, the guy only finished 25% of his job. and didn't get paid a nickel, I'd get paid 100%, and I'd do 100% of the job. Something like that. I'm not obviously a Trump impersonator, but the point is that I think the impacts are missing a little bit from Chris Christie. So if there was any advice, it'd probably be something like that. But anyway, it's. I think we all recognize it's probably going to be another, unless there's some more candidates that enter. Probably looking at another Trump v. Biden showdown. So we'll see. Nobody knows, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a crazy election cycle, and hopefully some of the ideas from some of the other candidates get adopted by some of the main candidates, because there are good ideas floating around from the other candidates. It was sort of like when I ran for governor in California. I had plans to, for a temporary period of time, utilize the National Guard to help us solve our homelessness crisis in California, and I thought my idea was great. But anyway, my hope was that if I didn't win, which I didn't, if I didn't win, actually came in second in recall candidates, that at least some of the ideas would survive. And I saw a lot of the ideas come up and still do in elections. For example, my National Guard for homelessness plan was adopted by the Republican mayoral candidate for Los Angeles. Of course, he didn't win either. So anyway, that's California for you. But so anywho, we shall see. Okay, so let's oh yeah, and then of course over the weekend, if you missed the drama, it's a good point, Steve. There's been a lot of drama about you've got on one hand RFK, who went on Joe Rogan's podcast for 3 hours and made a lot of vaccine claims and claims that Wi-Fi causes cancer, vaccines cause autism, and that the COVID vaccines are also bad. And I think there are a lot more people who agree with, well, the COVID vaccines are also not effective, at least, compared to, people worried about Wi-Fi, although maybe we should be, or all vaccines cause autism, right? These sort of claims have many times been debated before. And some of the drama that's happened politically over the weekend is that you have some very, very prominent vaccine scientists who dispute the claims of RFK on Twitter, but once invited by Joe Rogan and even financially supported by other people on Twitter who were saying, look, we'll pay money to have a debate between someone like RFK and a vaccine scientist, because we think these sort of debates should be happening with scientists. You have a little bit more of a, oh, no, we're scientists, we're not debaters. And so then people are like, okay, well, then does that mean somebody who's making claims like RFK wins by default? Well, no. But then if you're not willing to debate, then who is? Well, it should be somebody educated, right? But if a scientist isn't willing to debate, then who is? So, you kind of get a big hole right now. I think it's obviously substantially way too early to draw any particular conclusions rather. But I will say it's given RFK a lot of social media clout, specifically at least on Twitter. But then again, Twitter skews very, very heavily towards the free speech absolutist direction, that anybody should be willing to stand for an opinion that they make. And to some extent, there's a lot of merit to that. So anyway, we'll see. But I don't want to get so terribly deep into politics. But anywho, that gives us a little bit on Christie.